Welcome to the Inner Audit Live Lab. In today's episode, we featured HR consultant, thought leader, and podcaster Jenny Lavey, who walked us through her experience with the Inner Audit Pattern Assessment and what it revealed about her patterns under pressure. Jenny also shared how the assessment helped her feel seen, not just in how she leads, but in how she responds to pressure, distrust, and decision making in real time. Now, since our first conversation when I was featured on Jenny's podcast, BAM, around the role of mindfulness in leadership, Jenny talked about how she has actually stayed consistent in her practice and how the shift in her clarity and in her presence has been real. We also use this as a working session to step into the live lab with a tool that I just developed, the Inner Audit Decision Support Tool, a custom GPT. And we used it to process these moments of pressure that are alive for us right now. During the episode, Damien actually shares how powerful it was to use the tool because it helps him move from emotional activation to actual clarity around something that has been bothering him lately. Sometimes what feels like conflict is really a clarity gap, and the right tool, the right audit can change everything. We closed the episode with a live guided visualization designed to help shift our energy out of distrust and out of those feelings of frustration into regulation under pressure, nervous system regulation under pressure, and see ourselves victorious on the other side of the moment, not reactive, but clear. So if you have been feeling pressure, maybe overthinking decisions, noticing the same patterns that are repeating in ways that are not in alignment with how you desire to live your life, start with the assessment. Take the inner audit pattern assessment. And then if you find value, explore going deeper with the blueprint. The links are below. But in the meantime, enjoy the episode. People joining.
All
So
right.
I am going to just allow those that are here to, as we wait for a few more people to join, just continue to, or rather, start this session. And you chose to be here, so I encourage you to be present. To minimize multitasking if you can. If you're able to be on camera, please do join us on camera for the collaborative experience. But it's totally okay if you're not on camera, because if you want this to be a space for rest that is to rest and to be free from the camera, that's totally okay too. So we will get started in a couple minutes, and I'm just going to play a little bit of music to inspire a bit of groove and rhythm. As Jenny and I were just talking about Michael Jackson, and I have been inspired by music lately in a big way. So I'm going to turn it up just a little bit, and I'm going to stop talking, and I am going to allow you to just take some deep breaths with the sound, with the music, and allow yourself to become present with the music. This might not be music that you normally listen to, but feel free to just kind of relax your body, sit back in your chair or wherever you're sitting, standing. And if you want to close your eyes and just really kind of feel the groove, the rhythm, and see where your body takes you, and just allow that to shape your experience for the next minute or two. As we get ready to get started, I always like to open these sessions with a moment of arrival. And a moment of arrival is a technique that you can use in your meetings when you start meetings. assuming that people are arriving to their meeting with their mind somewhere else, right? Their mind might be on the meeting that they just left, or their mind might be on the thing that they have to do after your time with them. And so, as a courtesy and, just really in respect to this human experience that we're all in together, it's nice to be able to start meetings with just 3 deep breaths. No title for this meditation or anything like that. Just taking 3 deep breaths, giving yourself space to breathe deeper than you normally breathe, in through the nose and out the mouth. And I'll guide us through the breath work just to help you ensure that you are getting the full breathing experience and expanding the diaphragm. So, once again, I invite you to just get comfortable in your chair or wherever you are. And I invite you to close your eyes just to shut out your outside environment. And when you take your first inhale, maybe place your hands on your abdomen so you can actually feel yourself breathing in. And I'm going to count for 3 slowly, and then exhaling slowly for 3 counts. So breathing in, 2, 3, exhaling, 2, 3. And on the second deep breath, I invite you to take a exhale with an audible sigh. So breathing in, 2, 3, expanding the diaphragm, and exhaling, 2, 3. And then one last time, literally the deepest breath, really inviting oxygen to flood areas of the body that perhaps are deprived. So breathing in, deep, deep breath, feeling the abdomen expand. 1, 2, 3. Exhaling with an audible sigh. 2, 3. And before you open your eyes, just take a moment to notice how you feel. Whatever feeling, thoughts, emotions, sensations are present, say silently to yourself that they are all welcome. And finally, I invite you to turn your thoughts to gratitude. Gratitude for this moment, gratitude that you are here, gifting yourself space to process anything that is troubling you, that is creating pressure in your life. Using this as a container and being grateful that this container exists. When you're ready, I invite you to open your eyes. And before I introduce my guest, Jenny, I'd love for you to share, Jenny, how that felt. Even before you share any titles, who you are, what you do, how did that feel doing just taking
Sure.
that moment to contain that experience?
Relaxing. I think anytime you're going from, like you said, one meeting to the next, very little time to decompress in between. So it just like let me just be here and calm down everything in my body. So it felt like I took a little nap.
Yeah. And that's how quick it can be, right? To experience
Yeah,
that moment
yeah.
of relaxation. And the trick is to elongate the breath. Most of
Mhm.
the time in life, we are breathing shallowly. It's okay, right? Life doesn't require us to take deep breaths 24/7. But to be able to have that moment where you just have a container to breathe deeper than you normally breathe, you're literally flooding your body with oxygen, you're flooding your brain with oxygen, as well as your nervous system, and you are creating the neurological and physiological environment to handle the pressure of the day. And the focus of this session today is actually trust under pressure. In those moments when we experience distrust, whether it is outside of ourselves or with ourselves, distrust in our own, actions and our own capabilities, and how that turns into pressure. So we're going to go through some exercises to allow you to process any moments of distrust that you are experiencing right now. But first and foremost, thank you to everyone that has joined us today. My name is Shawntà Hooks. I am a speaker and I create leadership experiences rooted in decision clarity under pressure. So I help leaders, organizations, and individuals navigate these extreme times that we're facing right now. And pressure shows up in a lot of different ways. Obviously, we have workplace pressure, and we have AI transformation and how that is impacting workforces, how that is impacting the work that we do. On one end, sometimes making the work easier and creating more room and space for us to do bigger, brighter types of work. But on the other end, creating, the type of pressure that is displacing people. I think I probably have a conversation every day with someone, at least one person that has been displaced as a result of layoffs rooted in AI transformation. And it is uncomfortable. And so that creates pressure, but it also creates distrust. It creates a lack of, our identities are attached so much onto the work that we do. And sometimes that experience can be destabilizing to our human experience, our leadership experience, and our personal experience, whether you are a mom, a husband, a child, a parent, friend. All of these experiences and these relationships are impacted by that. And so I create experiences that really help people navigate those experiences. I have Jenny Lavey today. Am I saying your last name correctly?
Lavey, but close.
Lavey.
Lavey. Yeah.
Lavey. Jenny Lavey is with me today, and I met Jenny. Jenny actually, I was featured on her podcast, and I'll let Jenny talk a little bit about that podcast. But we have just connected. We've had several conversations, and I shared with her some of the things that I'm building with the inner audit system, which I'll talk a little bit about, as well as the assessment. And Jenny took the assessment and immediately got so much utility out of it. So I said, it'd be great to have a live conversation where we just share more about what pressure looks like for us as women, as leaders, and some of the tools that can help us. So, Jenny, would you take a moment to introduce yourself?
Sure. Well, thank you for having me. Shawntà and I have had multiple conversations, and I always come out of them with like full of energy and inspiration. So I appreciate you having me here. So Jenny Lavey, and I own a consulting company, an HR consulting company with a business partner called Rise Human Resources. And we really help support small and medium-sized businesses with what we like to say is all their people stuff. So anything from, tricky performance conversations to how do we help improve the employee experience or employee engagement, and how do we fill the right roles and make sure that we retain those people, kind of all over the gamut there. And it's been a wonderful departure from my corporate experience, and it's been so rewarding to be able to support companies that really don't have a lot of access to full-time HR. So yeah,
Mhm.
so that's what I've been doing for the last few years. My side project, which you just mentioned, is I have a podcast called BAM, or Badass Moms. And you were so kind as to be our guest. And we just, I absolutely love the episode. I send it out all the time. And I think it's important to share that I have been meditating ever since we had you on. And that was it January? Was it last? It might have been last year.
Last year, it was November. It
Last
was around my
year.
birthday, actually.
Yeah, okay. So I'm even more proud of myself, but I have admitted
Yeah,
it started at 5 minutes a morning. Now it's six
yeah,
minutes. It's like baby steps, right? And I
absolutely.
will tell you, I do feel a difference. It has been a
Yeah,
huge, huge impact. So
yeah.
yeah.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And for
Yeah.
those of you that don't know my story, I started my career in risk management, former CPA, audit, and automation strategy. And during those times in my career, I was not a meditator. I did not I just didn't adopt it as a lifestyle habit. I didn't understand it. And being that I am a very analytical, logical thinker, I tend to lead, especially back then, lead with that side of thinking. And so the idea of meditation just wasn't something that I grasped onto. And then pressure hit. I took a role where I became an automation transformation leader at Synchrony Financial, and it was one of the most challenging that was one of the most challenging jobs of my career, because it was a job that was born out of a reorganization, which meant that there were a lot of layoffs. There was already a lot of distrust in the function, and then you bring in me to layer on AI and automation into a role where people have already been displaced. So of course there's just this instant distrust that's happening in the environment, and I just didn't really know how to handle it. I was experiencing just so much self-doubt, so much imposter syndrome. I was taking everything personal. I was making a lot of assumptions, And I had no real framework to stabilize myself until meditation started to, just kind of appear, just really appear, like noticing a book that had meditation in the title, or noticing a commercial that mentioned mindfulness or meditation. And through that curiosity, I went down a journey of exploration into this topic. And after 6 months, I started to meditate every day for about, I got to a place where I was meditating every day for like 20 minutes a day. And it just totally changed. It changed everything. So much of the distrust that I was experiencing at work started to dissolve. I started to see myself with greater clarity. I started to have tough conversations that I had been avoiding. And the make a very long story short, I ended up getting promoted. Like at the end of that journey, right, of bringing in meditation and allowing it to change my brain and change my habits and change my outlook on life, my perspective, my work started to shift. It started to improve. My performance improved. And so I say all that to say, because when we experience distrust, when we experience our patterns under pressure, whatever those look like, and we are going to have space for you guys to think about those. Well, when we experience those, it can impact our performance. And so, before we get into Jenny, I want to have some time for you to share your experience with the pattern intelligence report that you received. But I want to do a quick exercise, and I'm going to share my screen. And I want you to just find your emoji, area of the Zoom. And when you see something on the screen that resonates with you, I would like for you to drop an emoji symbolizing that it resonates. So just to test out that everyone knows where their emojis are, if you could just drop an emoji right now, where the reaction button is. If you could just hit the reaction button and just drop one, anyone that you like, to symbolize that you are with me and that, okay, awesome. Thank you. All right. So can you guys see my screen, the distrust versus trust screen? All right. So distrust versus trust, right? The gap between operating on autopilot and leading on purpose. So let me know using an emoji if you can relate to this. So the first one is performing agreement. If you can relate to having those moments where you perform agreement, where you're agreeing to keep the peace, you're saying yes to things that are not necessarily things that you agree with. Yes, okay. And keep those coming. And you can also use emojis in the chat. The second one, editing before you speak. These are all signs of distrust, where you are editing yourself, you are rehearsing conversations over and over again. It's beyond just, practice, and now it is overthinking and obsession. Okay. Withholding your real read, right? And this is important for leaders, right? When you see something that is worthy of your conversation, of your perspective, but yet you hold back, right? Lots of emojis coming up there. Bracing for impact, really feeling that the floor is going to fall out from underneath you, that the worst is going to happen at some point. Being in victim mode is another word to express this. I see you, Kivia. That is definitely not the place that we want to be. And agreeing and then venting. This happens. People vent to me a lot, so I just have this energy where people tend to pull me in a corner and tell me their darkest secrets. And so I am constantly hearing people's vents, and they feel like they have a safe space with me. But what happens when I'm not around, right? When you don't have that person, are you able to actually express yourself fully? Not so much when you're in that moment of distrust. High output, low energy. High output, low energy, and I'm raising my hand with that one. I sometimes feel like, energy is just very low, especially in this season right now. And if you're into astrology, I'm happy to have a conversation of what's happening astrologically, that actually contributes to this, because there is a lot contributing to that right now. Jaw, shoulders, chest, and I'll also add face tight. I tend to hold a lot of tension in my face. And so a lot of times we hold that tension and we don't even notice it. So if you can relate to that, please signal your ability to relate. Can't fully exhale, finding yourself holding your breath. And this one can be tricky because a lot of times we don't really notice it. So can't fully exhale. And then finally, dread before meetings, right? Or dread before certain conversations, right? All of these are signs that you are experiencing some distrust, and that perhaps these, if you said yes to, three or more of these, which I think probably everybody said yes to every one of these, That is a sign, that is your symbol that you could use the inner audit. And the inner audit starts with the assessment. The inner audit was a tool that I created rooted in my audit background, my CPA background, to create a space where you can actually navigate these experiences and come out on the other side with a reframed mindset, with reframed energy. But it first starts with assessing that you are in that space, diagnosing it using some tools like the pattern intelligence report, as well as a GPT that I created that we're going to use today as well. And getting to the point where you actually trust, right? And the other side of that, just to show, the what it looks like when you are doing the inner audit, when you're doing the inner work and you feel supported. What that looks like is flow returns. Flow states are neurological states where I like to call them effortless effort, where you are actually doing, you're working, but it happens in a way that it feels so natural. It feels like flow. It feels like it's not working. And if you would like to experience more flow in your life, drop a one in the chat. And as a matter of fact, drop a one in the chat every time you see something on the trust side that is something that you actually desire. That signals to the brain that you desire these states. And so, therefore, your brain will actually start to work in such a way that you get it. So, flow returns, ideas arrive faster, right? Like ideas that you have been blocking, they start to arrive quicker. Saying the thing in the room, saying the thing that actually lands, not necessarily holding back, having the courage to say that. I'm not performing for anyone, right? Being able to actually say that this is not a performance. Life is not a performance. Life is an experience. And when you get into this energy of trust, you don't necessarily have to prove yourself and you don't have to perform for others. You can just be. Your thoughts are kinder, right? Your thoughts, especially your thoughts to yourself, are kinder. And when your thoughts for yourself are kinder, guess what? Your thoughts towards others tend to get kinder as well. Everything starts with the self. Pronoia replaces paranoia. And pronoia may be a word that you've never heard of. It's taken from a book that I read, and I've mentioned it 3 times today. But pronoia is the opposite of paranoia. I think we all know what paranoia is. Pronoia is a belief system that everything is happening for in your favor. And so, being able to have a more optimistic outlook on life returns when you're in that trust energy and when you have done the inner work. You know what you want. I like to say, you stand 10 toes down into what you desire, what you want out of life, and you are planted and grounded in it, feeling less like a victim and more like a victor. I always say when we get stuck in victimhood, we also get stuck in vigilance. And vigilance is associated neurologically with those states of fight, flight, freeze, with the states of nervous system that is in sympathetic fear states. And we actually don't want to be stuck there. We want to be there when we need to be there, but we don't want to live in victim states and in vigilance. We want to live as a victor, making less assumptions, asking more questions, right? This is so important, to be a trusting leader, and to have trust in your organization and in your life, to have the courage to actually say the hard thing as opposed to making assumptions. And then finally, my favorite, because I tend to fall into this, I'm a very passionate person, and there's a risk of passion. Passion, the other side of passion is that you'll take things personal. You attach your identity onto a future stated outcome, and you start to take things personal, and that just usually does not lead to where we want to be. So that these are all the business case for doing the inner audit. And I want to, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and just have a quick conversation with Jenny, because Jenny, you have the opportunity to actually take the assessment, which is the entry
Mhm.
point into the inner audit. And the inner audit is a system that I've developed. It's a framework, but it's also a system which includes the assessment and includes an enhanced assessment that I just rolled out, a blueprint that fuses astrology, human design, and other elements to give you an even deeper look at yourself. And then there are videos that are aligned to different workplace topics. And Jenny has done the entry point, which is the assessment. She's received her report. And I would love to just hear more about, first of all, when you took the assessment, what came out? What did you think about actually answering those questions? And then when you read your report, what stood out for you in your report?
Yeah. Well, I will say I am an assessment junkie. I love them. So, um, I don't know that everybody would have the same reaction, but I was like, oh, good. I get to take an assessment. But I find that they always give you something that you haven't thought of before, or, some aha moment, right? And so when I took the assessment, I mean, I do think that sometimes I overanalyze the questions a little bit. And so I try to answer the way it comes to me, like first instead of overthink it. But when I saw the results, I was like, it was a complete, I had been going through kind of a rough time at work with it was busy and things were a little bit crazy. And I had the aha moment that it told me that when I am under pressure, I start to work faster. Like when I don't have control, and it goes in my personal life too, right? If I don't feel like I have control, I just start to produce, and not necessarily ask, is this what I should be focused on? Is this what I should be working
Yeah.
on? So I start overcompensating to, and it's almost like I'm trying to gain control of the situation by overperforming, right?
Hmm.
So yeah, so that came out, and I was like, oh, I have been feeling like that for the last several weeks, maybe months. And I think that when you get to that point, I go, 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 and then all of a sudden I just shut down, right? And your best
Yeah.
work is not coming out, and it's all
Right.
effort instead of flow.
Yeah.
So
Right.
I completely resonated with that.
Yeah, and that is I typically work with people that identify as ambitious, that identify as high performers, that
Yeah.
identify, for the most part, as high functioning. And so the risk of that is overfunction,
Yep.
right? And what I always say is that, we don't want to be over or under on anything. Like we want to reach our optimized level, right?
Hmm.
And an analogy I use is, even water can be toxic. Like, I don't
Yeah.
know if people know that there's a such thing as drinking too much water, as water toxicity. It's actually believed that Bruce Lee died of over intoxication of water. It's very mysterious how he died. But that is one of the thoughts that he was actually consuming too much water as an athlete. And so what I love about assessments as well, and I'm also an assessment, it's the work that I used to do was to assess processes. And so it makes sense that I value, right? I value external perspective. I don't get lost in it, but I value perspective that frees me of my own judgment and my own bias
Hmm.
because that gets me to accountability faster. The same with an audit. The reason we have audits or assessments on processes is to have a third party come in, take a look at a process and evaluate it free from judgment, free from bias, and just provide a perspective that
Hmm.
can actually enhance the process. We as humans are no different, and so I love an assessment as well. You mentioned how it is highlighting aspects of your leadership that that you maybe could feel, but it hadn't really quite risen to the top. Can you see the value in using this with your team? And showing your team, these aspects or the team taking the assessment and using the report together as a team development exercise.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I mentioned this to you too, but I am going to share it with my team. But I think that it's important. A lot of assessments just tell you, here's your strengths or here's where you're good, but it doesn't tell you how you perform under pressure. And I think that that's where this is super helpful because I I know when I do send this to my team, they're going to 100% be like, "Yep, that's exactly what you do. Recognize
Yeah,
that." And then you have a common language, right? And it opens the dialogue where I can say to them, "If you see me doing this, then feel free to bring it to my attention because
yeah,
I might need to take a breath or say, tell me, step away from your computer." And then I can do that with them too. When I see their stress behaviors coming out and when they're under pressure, I can actually like help them work through it if they need it or help them step away. So,
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I can't remember, did I share the deeper astrological aspect of the report with you yet?
no, but I'm
Okay, I
all
have
for
to.
it.
Yeah, yeah, because that is the next level, and I'm going to share just so that everyone can be aware of it. So I am excited to say that I have rolled this out officially. The website is live, and Janice, if you could just drop the link to the Inner Audit website in the chat. But I'll share this page with you guys so that you can see the evolution of this experience. Because taking your assessment is one thing, right? And the assessment is obviously your point of view. You are answering the questions, you are providing that perspective, which means that it is inherently a little biased, right? It's all coming from your point of view. But as a data analytics, specialist, this is the work that I did for 20 years. Auditors like external data. We rely on the narrative of our process owners to, shape, what we see. But we like to look at external data as well. That is a bit more objective, is the word that we use. And we actually test data to see how objective it is for us to be able to use it in our testing. So the next layer of the inner audit assessment is the blueprint, the pattern intelligence blueprint. which takes human design, which is an energetic, manual, and it is rooted in your birth data, as well as astrological data, which is rooted in your birth data. And astrology is not just if you were born in November and you're a Scorpio, that's one. What I like to tell people is like what we think of astrology is one data point in
Mhm.
like 50. So like there, I mean, and really more. It's a lot more, but the most important aspects of it, we can just say, 15 to 20 aspects. That's a whole lot of data that we're leaving out. And really intelligent people mapped that data at some point. They said that this equals this equals this. And when we take this plus this, it equals this. And so these systems are objective points of view on ourselves. And what I have done is taken, because I am knowledgeable about human design as well as astrology. And then I have the pattern intelligence report that I created. I have created my own blueprint report that merges those three reports together, the answers from the assessment, as well as your human design and aspects of astrology. And I just pulled out the most important parts, the aspects of astrology that deal with your identity, that deal with your communication, that deal with how you show up in relationships, the things that really matter to us as leaders. I've taken those aspects and I've created my own pattern intelligence report. And that report is an extremely powerful tool that you can use with AI. That is one of my favorite ways to use these reports is to load my report into AI. And so now when I'm using AI to help me solve really complex problems, I now have a coach that knows me, right? They're not coaching me from a generic point of view. They're coaching me from my human point of view. And so the free report, if you take the assessment and, the assessment is free, Janice just put the link in the chat. You can take the free assessment. If you're interested in taking or getting the expanded blueprint report, it's on offer for $50. And then soon I'll be rolling out the on-demand system, which are the videos and then the community that supports it. So stay tuned. Everyone that is on my mailing list will get a preview to that when it's launched later in May. But the blueprint assessment report is an incredible tool that you can use to tailor your experience of self. And so, Jenny, I'll definitely share a little bit more of that with you so that you can get a flavor for it. But
Yeah.
what are your thoughts on that? And I'm not sure what your perspective on astrology and, all of these
Oh,
different topics are.
I don't know if you remember Sun Signs by Linda Goodman, but when I was growing up, she was like the one to read on astrology, and so I had all those books. I don't even think they're in print anymore. So I've always been interested in astrology, and I also have done my birth chart. I also have my
Yeah,
human design assessment done. So I
nice.
100%. But it's funny what you said about like you have your own coach. I created a GPT also with my different assessments for my teammates so that I can say,
Hmm,
this is what I want to pitch to my business partner. How might she react? What questions might she have? And I find it so incredibly helpful. And it's based on her data. So it's not like just making something up, right? It's based on her data
right.
and the way I operate and the way she operates. So it's very, very helpful.
Yeah, that it's a game changer.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where when we decide to start using these tools in a more in a collaborative way, right? Like
Mhm.
not, first of all, a self-study first and foremost is, by far one of the most important aspects of this experience that you can embark on right now. Those that don't know themselves, the
Mhm.
risk, and I speak the risk management language, the risk is that you will start to define yourself based on all these external opinions that come from social media, that come
Yeah.
from our parents, that come from our trauma, that come from, right, like, all these different places. And it's confusing. It's
Mhm.
noisy. Every week there is a new big headline. Like this week, I'm a big hip hop fan and basketball. And so this week it's Megan Thee Stallion, the rapper, and she broke up with her boyfriend, Klay Thompson, the NBA player, and it's like all over my social media and everyone has an opinion about what that means to be single, what that means to be a woman, what it means to be a man, what, like, right? And so it's so easy to get caught up in these ideologies of ourselves, and sometimes you need space to quiet the noise, to
Mhm.
quiet the noise to reflect on who you are. And that's where the reports come in, the astrological data, the human design data. It helps you see yourself with greater clarity, but also using AI. And I am a fan of AI. I'm a technologist by heart. And so I created my own GPT, and you guys are the first one to test this out. So we're going to do a little exercise. I put the link in the chat. And I also have it on the screen if you want to scan that QR code and pull up that chat. But the GPT is, and I'm going to actually share um, I'm going to share the GPT on the screen as well. So this is the GPT. It's called the Inner Audit Decision Support Tool. And what the way it works is it is the inner audit. I have coded it to bring in the inner audit framework, which if you've ever attended any of my sessions, the inner audit framework is rooted in CDC, is the acronym that I use to describe it. And what that stands for is, hold on, sorry. It stands for catching, I'll just say it out loud. It stands for catching the experience, which, can be done using narrative, catching, and then diagnosing using 5 why analysis. Whatever your problem is, asking why 5 times in a very strategic way, and then converting with a mindset tool, what I call clarity protocols. And I have carved out 9 that really run the gamut from movement, mind, stillness, sound, different ways to actually regulate the nervous system and convert your patterns under pressure. So, as we play around with this tool, I want you to think of a scenario that's happening in your life right now that is causing you pressure. And it can be something that is causing you pressure in the form of distrust. It can be something that's causing you pressure in the form of maybe it's restricted resources at work, or maybe it's something personal. The significant other is getting on your nerves. The children are demanding. Parents, right? We have parents that are sometimes aging, and aging parents can bring about pressure. Just think of one moment that is creating distrust for you right now, and just in a couple of sentences, you can. If you're not a fan of AI, you can absolutely do this the regular kind of more uh, what's the word I'm looking for? Uh,
Old-fashioned way.
the old-fashioned way without analog is the word I was looking for. You
Yeah,
can do this
yeah,
the analog way without AI, writing it down. That is absolutely effective. But I would love for you to play around with the tool. But just writing it down is catching it. That is the first step in this, is to get the thoughts out of the head and onto something else, whether that is AI, whether it's a piece of paper, whether it's just in this chat, right? So that you feel seen. So take a moment to just write your situation in the AI prompt, a couple sentences describing the scenario, and you can use one of the prompts that are there, run an inner audit on the work situation, help me understand why I'm bracing. You can use one of those prompts in conjunction with your scenario, or you could just hit enter after you hit your scenario. So I'm going to do this as well. I'm going to do this live with you guys. And so this is a working session. So go ahead and pull out your tool and start writing this out. But as you guys are writing out your scenario, I'm going to write out mine. So the other day, I I had a great day. I booked a new keynote with a local association at my full fee, and was firing off on all cylinders. And then later in the afternoon, I saw an email that felt like rejection. Someone that I had been connecting with to bring me on to a conference. I assumed it was rejection because they referred me as an exhibitor, and they didn't mention the speaking opportunity at all. And so I read it and instantly felt rejected. I felt pressure. I felt overwhelmed. And so I'm just going to type in, I felt rejected after what appeared to be losing a speaking engagement. Right. And I just want to highlight that was despite having 2 big wins that morning. I had 2 big wins, and then I got a potential no, and suddenly just felt deflated, like the world was crumbling under me. And so I use that example because I actually did the inner audit experience after this. I noticed my energy had just softened. I noticed my thoughts were negative. I noticed that I was questioning myself. I was starting to step into comparison syndrome, like all these spaces. And so I stopped. I got up, I went for a walk around the block, very short, and I call it streaming my consciousness because I like to journal by hand, but I also just like to speak. And so using AI is really cool. You can use the voice tool, or you can use your voice recorder feature on your phone. I like to speak, stream my consciousness, and I did that. And literally as I was speaking, I got clarity just from speaking. But then when I hit enter, I got so much feedback. And so I'm going to hit enter here, so that you can see what this shows up on the screen. Um, and so it's going to ask you, what happened, and I'm just going to, just for the sake of keeping this simple, someone else got chosen. And then you can ask it, help me do the five whys. This one, I did feel that way. I felt like I shouldn't have trusted this. Like this was an organization that I had never worked with before. I, already was coming in with some negative thoughts. And so, the rejection point, just showed up in this way. And so what the GPT is going to do is give me some perspective on that. It's going to actually help me process this by helping me see the pattern running underneath my experience. So, Jenny, did you get a chance to do your
Yes.
okay, I'm going to
I'm
stop
still
sharing
typing.
and here.
I'm still typing a little because it's basically what I love about it is it's like, nope, tell me more. That's not enough. Tell me how you felt. And so it's really like, prompting me. And now
Yeah,
it just said, good, that's the real moment. Because basically what I said was a lot of times I have to tell a leader if they want to fire somebody. Because usually what happens is a leader a manager, a people manager gets frustrated with somebody on their team and they haven't had the appropriate conversations to tell the person that they're frustrated, but it just continues to bubble up in them. And then all of a sudden they explode and they want to fire somebody. And what happens if you fire somebody without having those conversations and setting the stage ahead of time is that you can really put yourself in a lot of legal risk. And
yeah,
so
right,
this is a conversation that comes up over and over. And usually what happens is I will say, tell me what happened. They'll walk me through, and then I'll say, okay, that's pretty risky to do that termination. Like I'm not the police. They can do what they want, but it's my job. They hired me to let them know that they could be putting themselves at risk. So I basically said that I told a leader that they shouldn't fire this person immediately, that they should actually have some conversations. And they said um, that they wanted to, or actually it was opposite. They said they don't want to fire somebody that should be fired. And I
mm,
said, here's the risk of keeping them on, right? And the risk of keeping them on is that they are poisoning the well, right? They're really
mm,
damaging the culture and the organization. And so I said, in my head, what I wanted to say was edited. And so the GPT said, well, what did you want to say? And I said, what I wanted to say
mm,
was, so you want to keep this person on, even though he's an asshole and he's like killing your culture because he makes a few bucks, right? That's what I really wanted to say. And so then it says, like, okay, it tells me, like, let me reflect this back. And it says what it seems to be costing you and the pattern that might be running in your brain. So,
right.
yeah.
And
So
what
it's
did it say? I'm curious. What is the pattern that might be running in your brain?
translation gap under pressure. You're having a clear,
Mm,
accurate read. It comes out internally as blunt and charged. So you don't trust it. So you soften or withhold. And I think I told you that this assessment gave me some language that I didn't have before, which I do find incredibly helpful because I've been
yeah,
saying for a long time, there's so many times that I feel like I have to edit myself because I'm
yeah,
afraid to either upset someone or, whatever. And so I think it 100% picked that up. And it's
yeah,
basically saying you're editing yourself and here's why.
yeah. Yeah, and that is I was literally having a conversation yesterday with a woman who is Hispanic. She is an HR leader,
Mhm.
and she was saying the same thing, the fact that she has a male CEO, and the environment that she works in, she feels like she has to edit herself. And even the language, English is not her first language, and so even the language barrier, or I won't even call it a barrier, but the language difference, right,
Yeah.
creates that additional noise in the head, and there becomes, like, I love that language, a translation barrier, a
Yep.
translation pattern that we get stuck in, that contributes to
Mhm.
this experience. And so I'm going to share my screen again because I did my own inner audit as well, and show what it shared for me as it relates to the five why. because I think I just love this tool. Like I love the idea of having someone help me ask why 5 times to provide external perspective. When I used to be an auditor, 5 why is a lot, it's a little harder than it thinks because sometimes it's even hard to know the second why. Like it could be, for example, just keep it simple. I am angry. Why are you angry? I'm angry because someone, rejected me. And so then the next question is what? Well, why are you? It almost seems like it's repetitive, but there's a way to answer it to where you truly do after 5 passes get to the root cause. And so I've coded this GPT to kind of help you in that process. But this first pass, for me, why did this moment activate me? Because being passed over felt like confirmation that trusting the opportunity was a mistake. Why did that feel threatening? And that's usually the second question. Why did it feel threatening? Because it suggested I misread the room. I overestimated the opportunity or exposed hope too early. Why did that feel familiar? Because this may connect to a repeated experience of investing belief before certainty. There I go again, right? Getting my hopes up too soon, right?
Yeah.
And then feeling embarrassed, overlooked, or unseen. And I am very sensitive to embarrassment. That's something that I've had to confront. I mean, I've kind of gotten through it, now that I'm a speaker and I get on stages, but I still have this internal pressure to show up polished and to show up, perfect. And I'm constantly battling this need for perfectionism. And so it's exposing that. Why does my system keep using this response? Because distrust feels safer than disappointment. That's deep.
Yeah.
Like sometimes that distrust, and I would even say another word is safe, comfortable,
Yeah.
right? It feels more comfortable to stay in my experience of distrust than to experience the feeling of disappointment and actually confront it, because therefore I'm exposed, right? And someone like me, I'm a Scorpio, by the way. We don't like exposure. We like to we like to have ourselves, sometimes vulnerability can be a challenge for us naturally. But vulnerability is the key to really being able to live a life that is free, right? And sovereign. So what is the deeper safety need underneath this pattern? Likely protection from rejection plus control over disappointment. If I don't trust it, I can't be blindsided by it, right? And I mean, obviously, I haven't really sat with this, and I'm going to sit with this later. But this is all very accurate for me. And that's the interesting thing about rejection, especially, if you're talking about workplace experiences, we all have, those experiences. Drop a one in the chat if you have experienced rejection in your life as a leader, right? If you've been passed over for an opportunity, if you have, or in your personal life, right, as a single woman dating, right? Rejection is also a very real and alive experience. And so that feeling is so easy to get lost in it. And so having a tool like the inner audit to help you go a little deeper on that experience so that you don't stay there.
Mhm.
That's what the whole point of this is to help us. I used to, when I first started doing this work, I would always say, I like to meditate and perform and practice mindfulness and do the inner work so that it shortens the frequency and the duration of time that I am stuck.
Yep.
The frequency, the amount, the how many times I'm stuck, and how long am I in that stuck experience. And so this instantly is already providing some coverage for me.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that anytime you are an entrepreneur in business for yourself or in a position of leadership, right? You put yourself out there all the time. And so I tell people that when they're starting their own business or going out on their own, I'm like, every insecurity you have is going to come out. And that's exactly like what you just typed in. I'm like, I have felt the exact same thing. And it's super helpful to see, first of all, you're not alone. You're not
Right,
alone to the effect of like,
right.
a billion people are going to maybe use this and like see the same patterns come up, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's one thing I love about being able to process, these experiences in community, whether that community
Yeah.
is with another person, your therapist, your coach, your boss, your friend, and AI, is that
Mhm.
it instantly gives you that experience of you're not alone. Like
Yeah.
you are, we are all going through this
Yeah.
together. And so from that point, I would love for someone that anyone, if you can put in the chat any ahas that came from using the tool, or if you're willing to come off mute and just share what came up for you with using the inner audit decision support tool, either using the GPT or just, sitting with, some of these experiences on your own. That is okay, right? It's okay. Okay, I do see a chat. I'm having to drop for another call, but found it to be a great resource. Awesome. And, please, yes, Damien, please share. Would you like to come off mute?
Hello.
Hey,
Thank
Damien.
I really appreciated the chat. So I put in kind of a current situation that I'm dealing with, and it really helped me identify or clarify what I'm feeling and why I'm feeling it. Would you like for me to
Mhm.
speak to some of the things that it provided for me?
Sure. Absolutely.
Okay. Um, so one of the first, well, I've scrolled down further, but one of the first questions it asked is what happened. And it said I didn't have to be specific, I could be general. Um, it gave me what happened. You found out outside the room. Um, project you were. Okay, so I can say this. You found out outside the room. This is not specifically what I gave it. It kind of um recreated what I was saying in different words. But it says you found out outside the room at home that your supervisor reassigned a project you were already leading despite your deep context and progress. No discussion, no positioning, just a decision made. And so it's like, wow, it really elaborated and expounded on the one brief sentence that I provided. So that kind of evoked more emotion, but it helped bring me back down as I go further. So it says, what it seems to be costing you loss of control, but more specifically, visibility and authorship. You're now adjacent to your own work instead of leading it. That creates tension because the outcome may still reflect your thinking, but not your ownership. And so
Mm.
that right there really spoke to me. And even though this is not something that I want to happen, just properly articulating that feeling helped me.
Hmm.
Yeah. Oh, thank you for sharing that.
Hmm.
That's powerful. That is powerful. We have all been there before. I know I have, where I felt like my work was taken away from me, and and having the reflection, because that's what it's trained to reflect back, right? It's so important for us to see outside of ourselves, outside of our own heads, see our thoughts. And reflecting back to me is one of my favorite aspects of AI, putting it in words, just in slightly different words, and then providing some tools, some techniques. But first, the willingness to go deep, right? And I think that's what we're being called to do right now collectively, is to go a bit deeper than we're used to. Take the time, and you can use this tool. I'm going to fine tune it a little bit so that it doesn't ask so many questions, so that it can be a bit more efficient. So thank you all. You guys are literally the first ones to actually demo this with me. But the intention behind it is for it to be a quick resource where you can process, reflect, and then get some real insight. And at the end of it, it'll share a clarity protocol. And so as we get ready to wrap up this call, I want to do a quick mindfulness exercise with you guys that is rooted in visualization. Because as I said, the framework starts with catching, which is the narration into the tool, or journaling or streaming your consciousness, diagnosing using the five whys, or just figuring out your pattern underneath the problem, and then converting with a practice. And that can be stillness, that can be movement, but also visualization is a really, really powerful way to train the brain and train your nervous system to be in states of safety, to be in states of trust, to actually see yourself in those states, and then do that in a repetitive way so that you start to actually train yourself for that state. Because a lot of times we're not trained for it. If you are different, if you've experienced trauma, you likely are trained for distrust and you're trained for fear. And so we have to undo that wiring and undo that patterning. So this is just going to take maybe like 2 minutes. It's going to be a very quick exercise. So I invite you to just get comfortable, close your eyes just to block out the external environment. And we'll start with taking a deep breath. And I want you to just imagine the moment that you use for reflection. Just imagine that you're seeing the scene of distrust or pressure play out on a television screen. whatever scenario that you are thinking about, just allow yourself to see it, feel it, bring it to your mind, to your thoughts. And then take a moment to imagine yourself actually navigating that experience in a calm way with regulated energy, with confidence, with clarity. See yourself relaxed and poised. Maybe notice your shoulders drop. You can physically drop your shoulders, head up, chest back, or chest out, shoulders back. The physical posture of confidence. You don't have to find the words, but just imagine yourself speaking. Maybe no words coming out, but just imagine yourself saying the right thing. And maybe that means saying nothing. Or maybe it means saying the thing you've been holding back. And in your visualization, notice that there is no catastrophe, there is no drama. The floor is still beneath your feet. See yourself on the other side of the pressure as a victor. Notice how that feels. Notice any emotions. Notice any thoughts. If you feel inclined, bring a smile to your face because seeing yourself as a victor should make you smile. So smile. And then finally, show gratitude that not only did you survive your pressure moment, but show gratitude that you thrived in it and in spite of it. Take your hand and pat yourself on the back to symbolize success. Take a deep breath in through the nose and out the mouth. And when you're ready, open your eyes. How did that feel?
It's such a good way to put something in a container, you know? Yeah, and I do. I'm a firm believer in visualization as well, and just watching the reel play out without being
Mhm.
attached provides just clarity and a confidence, I think.
Yeah, and I would love for you guys to share in the chat how that felt as we get ready to close out this session. It's visualization is one of the most effective ways to transform your life. It is something that we often don't practice enough, especially with discipline. And it is the thing that changed my life. And it is a big part of the inner audit system that I am developing. Visualization practices are, tools that we can use in our professional lives and our careers to actually activate what Damien just put in the chat, clarity and confidence. You have to first see it. The brain needs the mental picture of it, and oftentimes we're busy, right? We're busy leaders, we're professionals, we have full lives, and we have everything distracting us. And so, what I like to do is create the container, the space for people to actually do this work, understanding that they may not have the self governance and the self discipline to do it on their own yet. And so, if you are in need of support as you navigate your own complexities, your moments of distrust, your moments of pressure in your professional life and or your personal life, because they are definitely connected. And I'm going to actually start doing more content that shows that I wrote a post last night that was how divorce impacts your leadership.
Mhm.
And I say that as someone that has been divorced before, and I remember what that was like having to show up, going through a divorce, and put a smile on my face, even though my life was, felt like it was falling apart. And my manager didn't even know it, right? My team didn't even know it. And so these things that happen in our personal lives, they impact us at work. And I just want to create space where we can talk about it frankly, and that's what the inner audit system is going to do. So stay tuned for the video system launch. If you're interested in purchasing your blueprint pattern report, it is on offer for $50. And I'm also offering, free consultation calls, one-on-one clarity calls to go through the report with you. But as we close this out, I just want to say thank you to those that showed up today for yourself. Thank you, Jenny, for this amazing conversation. And I hope that everyone has an incredibly clear week.
Thank you so much.
Take care, everyone.